Dude, sometimes I look at a brand new game fresh off the release and think, okay, it looks great, but is it really that much better than what we already had before? With that in mind, today I've put together 15 games considered outdated that anyone who calls themselves a gamer is practically required to play. Seriously, these masterpieces still hold up incredibly well to this day. And here's the most interesting part. You might be surprised to realize that they didn't rely on insane technology to be this good. So let's check out this list. Dying Light. Man, let me tell you about the first time I stayed out past sunset in Dying Light. I went from feeling like a total parkour god, jumping over rooftops and smashing zombie heads, to literally shaking as I heard a volatile scream right behind me. That transition from day to night is still one of the most stressful and brilliant mechanics in any game, period. It's outdated? Please. The parkour here feels way more fluid and physical than most of the stuff we see now. You actually feel the weight of Kyle Crane as he grabs a ledge or slides under a gate. The combat is just crunchy. There's no other word for it. Every time you swing a modded electric machete into a biter, you feel the impact. I personally love the weapon crafting. Finding some scrap and a blueprint to turn a simple pipe into a flaming death tool is so satisfying. The story might be a bit of a B-movie trope, but the city of Heron is the real star. It's a vertical playground that respects your skill. If you haven't experienced the sheer panic of a nighttime chase in this game, you're missing out on a core gaming memory. It's a 10 out of 10 for the atmosphere alone. Next up is Max Payne 3, and honestly, it's a crime that Rockstar hasn't touched this franchise since. This is hands down the most polished third-person shooter ever made. When you dive through a window in slow motion, it's not just an animation, it's physics. Max's body reacts to every chair, table, and wall. I remember being blown away by the Euphoria engine. If you land on a flight of stairs, Max actually tumbles down them like a real person. It makes the gunplay feel incredibly visceral and heavy. The change of scenery to Sao Paulo was such a bold move too. It's sweaty, it's bright, and it contrasts perfectly with Max's dark, noir-style internal monologue. Max is a mess, a pill-popping, whiskey-soaked ghost of a man, and James McCaffrey's voice acting is legendary. The bullet time is still the gold standard. Nothing beats that final kill cam where you see the projectile in slow-mo. My only gripe? The cutscenes are unskippable because they hide the loading screens, but the story is so gritty and well-written that I usually don't mind the wait. It's a high-octane masterpiece that proves linear games can still be absolute kings. Titanfal 2. I will stand by this until the end of time. Titanfal 2 has the best single-player FPS campaign of the last decade. It's a masterclass in pacing. Within the first hour, you go from being a grunt on the ground to bonding with BT-7274, a giant walking tank with a dry, literal sense of humor. The movement system is pure gameplay crack. Wall running and sliding feels so natural that every other shooter feels like you're walking through mud. It hooks you because it's constantly throwing new, brilliant ideas at you and never lets up. I'll never forget the Effect and Cause mission, the one with the time travel device. I won't spoil how it works, but the way it integrates into the combat and platforming is just mind-blowing. It's short, punchy, and has zero filler. Every mission feels like it could be its own separate game. The bond between Jack Cooper and BT is surprisingly emotional too. I didn't think I'd care about a robot, but by the end, I was ready to run through a wall for him. It's a tragedy this game didn't get more love at launch. If you call yourself a fan of shooters and you haven't played this, go fix that right now. For BT. Sleeping Dogs. Rounding out our first batch is Sleeping Dogs, the most underrated open world game of all time, period. You're Wei Shen, an undercover cop infiltrating the triads in Hong Kong, and the story is basically a top-tier John Woo movie. The atmosphere is what really does it for me. The night markets, the neon signs reflecting in the rain, the smell of street food almost coming through the screen. It feels so much more alive and dense than the massive, empty maps we see in a lot of modern AAA titles. The combat is the real standout. It's heavily inspired by the Batman Arkham style, but with a much more brutal martial arts twist. Using a car door to crush a limb or shoving someone into a spinning exhaust fan, it's visceral as hell. The driving also has this arcade-like snap to it that makes high-speed chases through narrow alleys a total blast. I'm still heartbroken we never got a sequel, because Wei Shen is such a complex, tortured character, caught between two worlds. It's a game with a massive heart, a killer soundtrack, and a world I honestly never wanted to leave. Don't let the outdated label fool you. This game has more soul than most things released this year. Medal of Honor 2010 kind of got run over by the modern warfare craze at the time, but it has a soul that a lot of shooters have since lost. While everyone else was chasing big cinematic explosions, this game tried to be real. It focuses on Tier 1 operators in Afghanistan, and the tone here is much more tense and personal. I clearly remember the Belly of the Beast mission. You're pinned down on a mountainside, ammo is running low, and the sound of bullets slamming into the rocks is deafening. It's not about being an invincible hero, it's about survival and brotherhood under a scorching sun. The gameplay has a different kind of weight. The guns kick hard, the gunfire sounds sharp and raw, and movement feels more deliberate. I personally love the contrast between the Ranger missions, which are pure chaos and heavy infantry combat, and the Tier 1 missions, where you move through the silence of the night using night vision goggles and precision rifles. The enemies aren't cartoonish, the danger feels constant and unseen. Ramin Djawadi's soundtrack, the same composer behind Game of Thrones, elevates the atmosphere to something both epic and melancholic. It might look a bit dated graphically in places, but the respect it shows for military realism still puts a lot of modern shooters to shame. Rise of the Tomb Raider. If there's one game that defines what a modern exploration adventure is, it's Rise of the Tomb Raider. In my opinion, this is the peak of Lara Croft's modern trilogy. I spent hours just in photo mode, admiring the way snow builds up on Lara's clothes or how the light hits the ruins of Kaitesh in Siberia. The real magic here is the balance between survival and discovery. The feeling of finding an optional tomb hidden behind a frozen waterfall and having to use your brain to solve a complex puzzle is something very few games deliver with this level of satisfaction today. Lara's evolution as a character is phenomenal. She's no longer the scared girl from the first game, but a driven and dangerous archaeologist. The combat gives you an incredible amount of freedom. I personally love playing in full stealth, using rope arrows in the environment to take out Trinity mercenaries one by one without ever being seen. But when things go loud, the firearms have excellent impact. The Metroidvania mechanics, where you gain new gear and return to old areas to unlock secret paths, are incredibly addictive. It's a polished, beautiful game with a pace that never lets you get bored. If you want to feel like a true explorer, this is an absolute must-play. Middle-earth Shadow of War? Man, I have to talk about the Nemesis system in Shadow of War. It's a crime that no other company has copied this mechanic to this day. That system creates personal stories that are completely your own. I remember an orc named Pug the Unashamed. I killed him like 3 times, and the guy kept coming back every time with new scars, trash-talking me and ambushing me at the worst possible moments. That builds a unique sense of hatred and rivalry. You're not just killing generic NPCs, you're building a blood-soaked story in Mordor. The combat is that extremely refined Arkham-style system, fluid, fast, and brutally satisfying. But the scale here is what really stands out. You're not just a ranger, you're a general commanding an army of orcs you recruited or brainwashed yourself. Assaulting a massive fortress while riding a drake, breathing fire on the defenders as your orc captains climb the walls, is one of the most epic experiences you can have. Some people say the map is too big or the missions get repetitive, but the loop of hunting captains, exploiting their weaknesses, and dominating entire regions is pure gaming crack that keeps you hooked for dozens of hours. It's the ultimate sandbox for any Lord of the Rings fan. Splinter Cell Conviction. I know franchise purists tend to turn their noses up at this game because it leans more into action, but Splinter Cell Conviction is way too stylish to be ignored. Here, Sam Fisher is no longer an agent following orders. He's an enraged father on a path of revenge, acting like a predator in the shadows. The mark and execute mechanic makes you feel like John Wick before John Wick even existed in movies. You plan your moves, mark 4 targets, and clear a room in 2 seconds with surgical precision. It's one of the most satisfying mechanics in the history of stealth games. What I love most about this game is its noir aesthetic. Mission objectives are projected directly onto the environment. Sam's memories appear like old films on building facades. Everything feels incredibly integrated and immersive. The hand-to-hand combat is brutal. Sam uses Krav Maga techniques that are almost painful to watch because they feel so real. Stealth here is aggressive. You use the shadows to strike, not just to hide. The story is personal, fast-paced, and keeps you on edge the entire time. It may not be the slowest, most methodical stealth game out there, but the feeling of being the most dangerous hunter on the planet is executed perfectly here.
It was clear that the workshop was at the center of the Monarch operation.
Quantum Break is such a trip. Within the first hour, you realize this isn't your average third-person shooter. It's a high-concept sci-fi experiment that mixes a game with an actual live-action TV show. I remember the first time I caused a time stutter, seeing the entire world freeze and shatter into these crystalline shards while I could move freely was a total holy crap moment. Remedy Entertainment are absolute masters of atmosphere, and the way they blend the gameplay with the live-action episodes was so ambitious. Your choices in the game actually change scenes in the show, which is a wild concept that I still think was ahead of its time. The combat is where the game really shines for me. Once you unlock Jack Joyce's time powers, like the Time Shield or the Time Blast, you stop playing it like a cover shooter and start playing it like a god. Dashing across the room in a blink and catching enemies off guard is so satisfying. I'll be honest, the story can get a bit brain-melty with all the time travel logic, but the performances by Sean Ashmore and the legend Lance Reddick keep it grounded. It's a stylish, heavy-hitting experience that still looks incredible in 2026. It doesn't rely on a massive open world. It relies on a rock-solid vision and powers that make you feel truly powerful. Tom Clancy's The Division. I know, people have mixed feelings about looter shooters, but let's talk about the vibe of the first The Division. To this day, I haven't seen a more atmospheric realization of New York City. Walking through a snowy, deserted Manhattan on Christmas Eve, seeing the abandoned cars and the flickering lights, it's haunting. I remember my first time entering the Dark Zone, that tension of not knowing if the other players you meet are going to help you or shoot you in the back for your loot. That's some of the most heart-pounding multiplayer I've ever experienced. The gameplay loop is incredibly addictive. Customizing your agent, upgrading your base of operations and the post office, and finding that one perfect high-end assault rifle kept me hooked for months. What I really love is the environmental storytelling. You find these echoes, holographic reconstructions of past events that show you the tragic stories of the people who lived through the outbreak. It's a dark, grounded take on the apocalypse that feels much more real than a zombie wasteland. Even if you just play it solo to experience the world and the story, the level of detail in that map is something every gamer needs to witness at least once. BioShock. Would you kindly? Those 3 words changed gaming forever. BioShock isn't just a game, it's a philosophical masterpiece. I'll never forget descending into the underwater city of Rapture for the first time. Seeing that Art Deco architecture crumbling under the ocean while a madman talks about a world without rules, it's pure genius. It's an immersive sim that actually respects your intelligence. You aren't just shooting, you're combining plasmids, superpowers, with traditional weapons. Setting a pool of water on fire with a trap bolt and then shocking it with electricity, that's the kind of creative freedom that modern shooters often lack. The atmosphere is thick with dread and nostalgia. Every corner of Rapture tells a story of a dream that turned into a nightmare. And the Big Daddies, they are still some of the most terrifying and iconic enemies in history. The way they groan and stomp through the halls makes your hair stand up. It's a game that asks deep questions about freedom, power, and choice. And the twist? Man, if you haven't experienced the twist in BioShock, I am actually jealous of you. Go play it right now. It proves that you don't need 4K ray tracing to create a world that is completely unforgettable. Uncharted 2: Among Thieves. If you want to know why Naughty Dog is considered one of the best in the business, you look at Uncharted 2. This is the definitive cinematic action game. The opening, Nathan Drake waking up in a train car hanging over a snowy cliff, is still one of the best cold opens in history. This game is pure, unadulterated joy. It feels like you're playing through the greatest Indiana Jones movie ever made. The chemistry between Nate, Sully, and Chloe is so natural and funny that you genuinely care about them. It's not just about the treasure, it's about the journey. The set pieces are legendary. The collapsing building in Nepal, the high-speed chase through the mountains, the fight on the top of a speeding train, it's all seamless. It doesn't feel like a scripted, boring event. It feels like you are the one making the narrow escapes. The gunplay is snappy, the climbing is intuitive, and the pacing is perfect. There's no dead air in this game. It's a globe-trotting adventure that never wastes a second of your time. Even though it's technically outdated, the sheer polish and fun factor make it better than 90% of the action games released today. It's a 10 out of 10 masterpiece that every gamer must play. Mass Effect 2, let me be perfectly clear, is the gold standard for how to write a sequel. It kicks off with one of the most shocking openings in history. I remember literally dropping my controller and saying, wait, did that actually just happen? BioWare took a great sci-fi RPG and turned it into a high-stakes suicide mission where every single person on your crew can die if you're not a good leader. The hook here isn't just the space combat or the biotics, it's the loyalty. I spent hours talking to characters like Garrus, Mordin, and Tali, just soaking in their backstories. By the end, they didn't feel like NPCs, they felt like my actual squad. The gameplay shift toward a punchier, more tactical shooter was exactly what the series needed. But man, that final mission, the tension of deciding who goes into the vents, who leads the fire team, and who stays back to defend the door, that's pure adrenaline. Every choice you made throughout the game ripples into that finale. It's a game about leadership, sacrifice, and the weight of being a hero. Even with the outdated textures, the character writing and the sheer scale of the Reaper threat make it an essential experience. If you haven't sat in the captain's chair of the Normandy SR2, you haven't truly lived a sci-fi epic. Metro 2033 Redux. Now let's go from the stars to the mud and the dark of the Moscow tunnels. Metro 2033 Redux is probably the most atmospheric shooter I have ever played. It's not just a game about shooting mutants, it's a game about survival in a world that's already ended. I love the analog feel of everything. You have to manually pump your pneumatic rifle, wipe the blood off your gas mask, and constantly check your watch to see how much air you have left. It's claustrophobic, it's terrifying, and it's beautiful in a very bleak way. The world building is just top tier. I found myself just standing in the market stations, listening to people talk about their lives before the bombs fell. It makes the world feel heavy. The combat is gritty and desperate. Ammo is literally money in this world, so every shot you take feels like it's coming out of your pocket. I personally love the Ranger mode because it removes the HUD and makes you rely on your senses. It's a slow burn horror shooter that respects the source material perfectly. If you want a game that makes you feel the cold and the fear of the dark, Artyom's Journey is mandatory. It's a masterpiece of immersion that puts many modern, clean shooters to shame. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Finally, we've reached the king. The Witcher 3 is the game that basically ruined other open worlds for me. People call it outdated now because it's a few years old, but I'm still waiting for a modern game to have side quests this well written. I remember wandering into a tiny village in Belen, thinking I'd just do a quick contract for some gold, and 3 hours later I was caught in a massive, heartbreaking story about family, grief, and monsters that weren't always the ones with claws. Geralt of Rivia is such a nuanced protagonist. He's cynical and world-weary, but he's got this hidden heart that makes every choice feel personal. The world itself is just chef's kiss. Whether you're riding through the war-torn no man's land or sailing the frigid waters of Skellige, the atmosphere is intoxicating. I spent weeks just playing Gwent in taverns and tracking down legendary gear. The combat is tactical and forces you to actually be a witcher, brewing potions, oiling your blade, and studying the bestiary. It's a game that respects your intelligence and rewards you for just existing in its world. It's a massive, beautiful, and deeply human masterpiece. If you call yourself a gamer and you haven't lived Geralt's life, you're missing out on the soul of our hobby. And that's the list. 15 outdated games that, in my opinion, still have more soul and personality than half the stuff coming out today. These games didn't just rely on pretty graphics, they relied on vision, grit, and amazing storytelling. They are the reason I love gaming. But I want to know, which old game do you still play today? Is there a classic you think everyone must play that I totally missed? Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. I read every single one.